'Tis the season to be jolly. Fa la 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 la, la 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 la. Is it? For some, maybe most, Christmas time is a warm season of holiday cheer, family tradition, and heartwarming nostalgia. For those who celebrate, of course. But did you know there are a variety of fears which keep many from fully investing in the holiday spirit? Some are arguably quite reasonable and even obvious, such as the fun-to-say phaeophobia, the fear of elves. And then there's the more obscure tyrannophobia, the fear of reindeer. The fear of Christmas trees has a name too long and unwieldy for me to remember, and the fear of gifts is called duranophobia. But there's a big one, a real behemoth, which many children and some adults experience more commonly than all the others combined. Some kids might have it for one Christmas and get over it. Some will have it for years. Others still experience only a flash of it, perhaps while standing in line at the mall waiting to see the big guy, Kris Kringle himself. I can relate. The fear of Santa Claus goes by two names, Santaphobia or Clausophobia. As a 32-year-old man, I prefer the latter due to its furtive and mature sound. If I must say it aloud in the presence of anyone who does not know my history, I don't sound quite so pathetic. But those who know the story behind my phobia sympathize with me. They might think me crazy if I did not have some apprehension around the subject of Santa Claus. Anyone familiar with what happened to me would call my fear only logical, rational, at the very least, reasonable. We all want to be understood, don't we? So come closer and make yourself comfortable. My name's Ray, by the way. Ray Lehman. Settle in while I help you understand me a little bit better. I didn't happen to believe in jolly old St. Nicholas the first night I woke to see him standing in my bedroom. Only there was nothing jolly or saintly about him. Old, yes, and wearing the suit, the hat, but nothing else about him matched the rosy-cheeked man from the picture books. I was 5 years old. I'm not sure why I woke up that night. It could have been the blip between sleep cycles that usually goes unnoticed, or maybe my reptilian brain urged me to wake up in the presence of the threat, the presence of the creepy Santa. He did not react to my waking, didn't even flinch. He made me believe I might be dreaming. My small bed ran against the room's far wall. My window nested slightly above the mattress near my feet. My curtains were drawn, but it must have been a moonlit night because I distinctly remember a hazy blue glow around the edges, giving the air an ambient, dreamlike mystery. I woke on my left side, facing my bedroom door. It was closed as usual, and there, standing beside it with his hands hidden behind his back, his feet turned too far outward like a penguin's, and his face partially hidden by his floppy red hat, was Santa. I already called him old, but old to the perspective of a 5-year-old. This Santa's beard still had some color to it, streaks of reddish-brown mixed with the grayish-white hairs making Santa look stained. His long hair looked similar and piled on his broad shoulders. One thing this Santa got right was the classic Santa build. He was quite large, and this time I don't just mean to a 5-year-old. If you made me guess, I'd say he probably stood somewhere in the neighborhood of 6'3" and near 300 pounds, which he carried on a broad frame. His shoulders looked as wide as the door frame he stood next to. At his feet rested his gift sack, only this Santa's gift sack was an army green duffel bag covered in dark stains. I wasn't sure if it was the bag or Santa himself, which smelled so awful. The stench of sour fruit and stagnant pond water filled my entire room. Maybe that's why I woke up. The smell made me not want to breathe. "Hello?" I whispered to Santa. He did not react. I could see the moonlight glinting off of his blue eyes. They were trained on me. He stood perfectly still and watched me, keeping his hands behind his back. His hands behind his back might have been the scariest part. A deep down part of me wanted to scream, "What are you hiding back there? What do you have?" But I pushed that part down because another deep down part of me didn't want to know. I was scared to find out. I sat up in bed and asked, "Who are you?" This prompted my first response from the smelly Santa. He took one hand out from behind his back. It was empty, and raised a finger to his lips. You may be wondering why I did not cry out, scream for my parents who were sleeping just down the hall. Well, I wanted to, but I found myself almost entirely breathless in the sinister Santa's presence. His finger to his lip served to dissuade me from doing something I was already too terrified to do. And also, I still thought I might be dreaming. The hazy moonlight, the seamless transition from asleep to awake, the weirdness of the situation, it all felt too much like a nightmare for me to immediately believe it was real. But if it was only a dream, I knew that meant the creepy Santa couldn't really hurt me, so I slipped quietly out of bed, watching him watch me the whole time. His hand returned to his spine, but otherwise he made no movement. Only his head turned to follow me as I crossed my room to the door. He allowed me to open it and to step through it, making the whole situation feel even more dreamlike. However, as soon as I entered the hallway, saw my parents' bedroom door down and across it, I knew it was real. I had awoken enough to accept reality and sprinted to my parents' room with tears in my eyes. Once in my parents' room, I felt the dream feelings separate and knew I existed in reality. So did creepy Santa. I slammed against my dad's side of the bed and shook his leg. "Dad, there's a guy in a Santa costume in my room," I shouted at whisper volume. Dad sprang awake, his covers flying off of him like a ghost. I dodged one of his swinging legs and jumped back as he sprang for the door. "Careful, Jason," Mom scolded Dad. She does that when she's scared. But like any father intent on protecting his offspring would, Dad charged away to encounter the threat head-on. Mom and I waited in silent tension and listened to Dad stomp down the hallway, ready to chase the smelly Santa out of our house. But then his footsteps softened and eventually came back toward us. He reappeared in the doorway, in front of the hallway light he had turned on, which cast his face in mysterious shadows. He scratched the back of his neck. Ray, how about you come with me?" he asked in that way that isn't really questioning. Mom asked, "Is everything okay?" To which Dad answered, "You can go back to sleep." "Yeah, right," said Mom, but she laid back down. Dad led me down the hallway to my bedroom door. He paused there, so I did too. He got down on one knee to meet me at eye level and asked, "Think hard. Is it possible you could have been having a nightmare?" I shrugged, but then I shook my head no. "Well, I'll tell you what," said Dad. "I checked, and nobody's in your room. I'll go in with you and we can look." He stopped short and rose to his feet, looking over his shoulder. "Did you hear that?" In all honesty, I didn't hear anything, but Dad swore he heard the sound of our rear sliding door lock. He told me to go back to Mom and ran out of the hallway. He turned on a bunch of lights and made a bunch of noise going to the door, but in the end he came back to Mom and I, equally as embarrassed as the first time. He apologized and excused himself as being on edge, understandably so. He still searched my bedroom with me, and then we all turned in to finish our restless night. I saw him again, and again, and one more, again. The next time I saw him, I screamed immediately. I knew I hadn't just imagined the putrid impostor the first time. I didn't stop screaming until my dad burst through my bedroom door. I stopped because when Dad burst in, Santa burst into nothing. In Dad's mind, that proved beyond a reasonable doubt that I never actually saw anyone real. Dad was the best criminal prosecutor in the state, by the way. That second time really set me up for a boy who cried wolf scenario the following night when I woke for a third time to see Santa standing by my wall. Actually, I'd woken up facing the opposite wall, the one right next to my bed. It was the sour fruit smell which alerted me to the presence of he who knows when you're awake. By the time I rolled over, Santa was turning toward the door. He hurried out of it before I opened my mouth. By the time my volcanic scream erupted from my lungs, he'd already vanished. Dad came in again and scolded me. Mom was standing behind him and scolded him. Then she sent him back to bed as only a mother can and came in to sit at the foot of my bed. We talked for a long time about what I was seeing and why I didn't believe it was a dream. Mom admitted she smelled something funky, her term, in the air, but I could tell she did not fully believe me. Not really. She did go check that the doors and windows were locked and reported back that they were. Dad got up after Mom went back to bed and went to the couch, where he slept for the rest of the night. In the morning when I asked, he said it was to make sure I was definitely safe and that nobody was coming in or out. But I'm not so sure that was really why. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, I saw Santa a number of times, but never told my parents about them except the day after when it wouldn't disrupt their sleep. Sometimes I think I really did just dream him. Other times, whenever I could also smell him, I knew he was real. But the Santa never tried to get close to me, never appeared to threaten me, and more often than not, he would already be on his way out of my room by the time I opened my eyes. I could never go back to sleep afterwards. Mom wanted me to see a therapist. Dad said no. So now we've arrived at December 22nd, mere days before Christmas. The holiday buzz was at its peak. My parents and I met up with my Aunt Celia and cousin Connor to do some last-minute shopping, as well as various Christmas activities around town. Downtown shops were giving out hot cocoa and candy canes to draw in customers who would then see their big deals for the season. While standing around in a home goods store, I overheard Mom telling Aunt Celia about my so-called nightmares, and I also heard Aunt Celia tell Mom my cousin Connor really wanted to go see Santa. These two subjects were connected because Connor wanted to see Santa that day, and he wanted me to go with. At the time, Connor was only 3. He still believed in the jolly, plump Santa Claus from the books and movies and knew nothing about my creepy Santa. If he knew, I'm sure he would not have been so eager to sit on his lap. Dad overheard their conversation too and said the hardware store in the north part of town had a Santa in store that day. We loaded into our respective cars and headed that direction. During the drive, Mom asked if I would be comfortable seeing Santa, and I told her I could hang out with Connor in line, but would not sit on Santa's lap myself. If I didn't believe, what was the point anyway? Mom agreed with my logic and promised I would not be pressured to go up to Santa. When we arrived at the hardware store, Aunt Celia and Connor were already waiting in line. Santa was seated at the very back of the store, out of sight from where we first entered. The line wrapped in and out of 2 aisles, which made it much easier for me to goof around with my cousin without dwelling on what we were there to do, who we were there to see. After 10 minutes or so, Aunt Celia told Mom she had just remembered she needed a new drill battery and asked if my parents were okay watching Connor while she went to look for one. Mom offered to go with her if Dad was okay watching both me and Connor, which he said was fine. Mom and Aunt Celia must have gotten sidetracked because they were gone for a long time. We rounded one aisle and entered the next, the final stretch, to St. Nick. I could see the fluffy edges of an artificial snowbed around his big gold and red throne, but Santa himself remained out of sight. "Uncle Jason?" Connor timidly asked about halfway down the aisle. An annoying bigger kid bumped into me when Dad answered him, so I didn't hear the rest of Connor's question. I just heard my dad say, "Oh, okay, buddy. Well, how about Ray goes up with you? Would that help?" I cut in. Dad, Mom said I didn't have to go up, remember?" He said, "I know, but Connor's smaller than you and he's feeling nervous. Don't you think you could be big for him and help him go see Santa?" Standing my ground, I said, "No, if he's too scared, then let's just leave. It's not even the real Santa anyway." "Ray," Dad scolded. "He's not?" asked Connor. Dad said, "Sorry, Connor, Ray's just being a Grinch. If you're scared when we get up there, he'll go up and stand next to you, okay?" I argued. "Mom said," but Dad cut me off. "Your mom isn't here right now, and I'm saying it won't hurt you to get over this nightmare you have so you can help out your little cousin, okay? It'll be good for both of you, and maybe once you've seen that Santa's nothing but a harmless old guy, you'll stop having those bad dreams." "No, I won't," I argued. But you know how those types of arguments go. We reached the end of the aisle, and Santa entered my view. He immediately plucked a familiar note in my subconscious. My reptilian brain recognized him instantly. But I told myself that I'd never gotten a look at the creepy Santa in good light. I didn't really know what his face looked like. I did know he had dark streaks in his beard, which this Santa did also. But there were two other random men waiting in line with us who had streaks in their beards too. One dark with light streaks, one light with dark streaks. It was clearly a common feature. Still, I couldn't bear to look at the Santa in the throne. I quietly begged Dad to take us away from there, but was again denied. Soon it was Connor's turn, and Mom wasn't there to save me. Santa beckoned to him. I turned away. Connor tugged at my sleeve and whined at me. Dad grumbled a command and nudged me forward. When Connor felt me move with his tugging, he ran forward, elated into the arms of, I suddenly knew beyond any doubt, the creepy, smelly Santa. I caught a faint whiff of his sour stench as we both looked up at Connor running towards him, and our eyes met. I saw him recognize me, too. Ho ho, you wait your turn back over there, little friend," my nightmare come to life said. "No, I need him," Connor whined from the subverted Santa's lap. I froze, unsure what to do. I wanted to go back to my dad. No, I wanted to go find my mom and tell her about the man currently holding my cousin while Dad obliviously watched. But I heard Santa say, ho ho ho, well okay then, step on up." And Dad gestured for me to go. I approached, but stayed out of his reach. My presence gave Connor the confidence to speak to Santa, but the line of onlookers made him too shy to speak above a whisper. I could barely hear their conversation, but it sounded like standard "what do you want for Christmas" type stuff. Connor hopped off of Santa's lap when he was done and ran past me toward Dad. I turned to follow, but Santa said, "Hold on, don't run off yet. You're still on the nice list, so far." He used the sort of vague, threatening tone which implies imminent danger, so I turned back around. "Come on," he said. "Let's hear what you want for Christmas." As I stepped closer, I mumbled, "I don't believe in Santa anymore." He asked, "No? And why not?" I could smell that pickly sweet stench on his breath as he spoke, low and only loud enough for my ears. "If you don't know what to ask for, I have some suggestions. You could ask for your house not to burn to the ground with you in it, right? Or how about you ask for your parents not to be shot in the head in front of you, huh, kid? I know that's what I would wish for, and then I would be a very good boy and not go sharing any secrets I'm not meant to. Does that sound good to you, Ray?" He knew my name. I don't think Connor said it to him. I think he just knew it. "Yeah, okay," I said, trying to leave quickly. As I pivoted away, he said, "And you'll be a good boy?" I didn't answer. Loudly, he bellowed after me, "Ho ho ho, you just remember to be a very good boy and you'll be A-okay." Even my young ears heard straight through his forced jolliness. I knew I was in grave danger. When I got back to Dad and Connor, I pushed through them, walking deeper into the store to get out of sight from Santa. "Whoa, Ray, where are you going?" Dad yelled after me. "To find Mom," I replied. "Ray, I'm right over here," Mom's voice said around the corner. Aunt Celia peeked her head around and saw us coming. To my whole family, I stated that the hardware store Santa was the very same man who had been coming into my room at night and just watching me. Even Mom appeared highly skeptical, probably thinking my nightmares might be growing into delusions. However, she agreed to come take a look at him just in case she recognized him or would at least know him if she ever saw him sneaking around the house. Dad came too. We peered out from the end of an adjacent aisle to spy on the Santa for a few seconds. Mom ducked back quickly, and Dad and I copied her. "Do you know who that is?" Mom asked Dad. Dad raised an eyebrow and shook his head. Mom said, "Well, I can't really say either, but he does look very familiar. I swear I've seen him before." As we were leaving, Mom stopped a man wearing a simple name tag instead of a trademark employee vest. "Excuse me, are you the manager?" Mom asked. The man said he was. She asked him if he knew the name of the man playing Santa that day. He said of course, it was Albert, the locksmith the store contracted with. He said Albert moonlighted as Santa for events in December. "That's it," Mom exclaimed. "He's the locksmith that came out last month when I locked our keys in the van on our way back into the house. Remember we got locked out and it was like 20 degrees? "Oh yeah," Dad said absently. Then his face hardened, pinched, and he said with more conviction, "Oh yeah. Oh, I do recognize him now." And he and Mom looked at each other. Mom turned to the manager. "Could we speak to you about something in private? It's going to sound strange, but it might be really important. It's about Albert." The manager looked scared, and a little bit like he might have been waiting for just such a moment for a long time. We waited in the manager's office while he called the police. A sergeant met us at the house when we got home. Mom and Dad made me explain everything again. Apparently, despite how isolated I'd felt during those terrifying weeks, I had been far from alone in my experience. The sergeant thanked me for being so observant and outspoken because the police had received at least half a dozen reports of a large man dressed as Santa Claus sneaking into homes all over town at night. Many, but not all of the reports came from children like me. Fortunately, some came from more credible sources, i.e. adults, which prompted a soft investigation into the claims. Albert Letts, the locksmith I accused at the hardware store, was their first real lead in a weeks-long search. It would later be revealed that each of the people who had reported seeing a creepy Santa in their room at night had utilized Albert's service sometime earlier that year. Remember how Albert had threatened me back at the store? Well, besides being essentially an admission of guilt that I shared with the sergeant and later a detective, they were hollow, meaningless words. After revealing his evil secret, I still saw the Albert Santa at night with some frequency, but one simple fact always reminded me that I was dreaming. Albert Letts was dead. The police brought him in the very same afternoon I fingered him. I'm told they talked to him for 2 hours before he demanded a lawyer, and without any evidence beyond hearsay, they were forced to let him go. Albert Letts was an orderly man with no criminal priors. Until they could prove he was sneaking into people's houses at night, they could find no justification to hold him. But they didn't need to hold him, at least not for the sake of public safety. That very night, Albert Letts realized the board was stacked against him and took himself out of play, removed himself from the game. After his death, it was much easier for the police to get a warrant based solely on the accusations against Albert as well as the means his profession provided him. What they found haunted me long after my nightmares of a smelly Santa faded away. As a small, terrified child waking in the middle of the night to a disturbing scenario, I had failed to notice every important detail about the creepy Santa. I obviously detected his stench, noticed his size and the discoloration in his beard, but I always remembered his hands being behind his back. To me, that pose made him look confident, calm, like he was in complete control and there was nothing I could do to stop him. I never once saw the reason he really kept his hands back there. He was hiding his camcorder. The same camcorder he used to record numerous others in their sleep as well. Over the course of their investigation, the police discovered hundreds of videos of unwitting victims sleeping on Albert Letts' hard drives. They also discovered that, prior to his death, he was the primary contributor to a website called HeSeesYouWhenYou'reSleeping.com, a site exclusively purposed to host videos of people just sleeping. At a glance, if you'd stumbled upon this website knowing nothing about it, it might have appeared relatively harmless, maybe like a part of a research study or something. But any length of journey into the comments section below any video would have told you otherwise. I don't know what it is the creeps who utilized the site got out of it, and since I personally had 7 videos online there, I don't really ever want to know. The most popular videos, the ones with the highest view counts, seemed to be those that ended with the subject stirring and coming awake before the videos abruptly ended. The thrill of spying on someone unsuspecting was clearly a part of the game. Shutting down HeSeesYouWhenYou'reSleeping.com proved nearly impossible, but with its premier uploader deceased, the already buried website deteriorated. Its users were a small community, and without fresh content, they got bored. They probably moved on to another website in another dark corner, found a new provider to supply them with their grotesque fix. How many of them maybe went on to try creating the perturbing content themselves? Somehow, even though my personal tormentor is gone, I feel less safe knowing people like him are out there, preying upon us all. If you'd seen the variety available on that website, you'd understand that no one is safe. Doesn't matter if you believe me or not, if you're naughty or nice. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He doesn't care if you've been bad or good. So for goodness sake, be safe. You made it out. Congratulations. If you enjoyed the story, please rate, like, review, or subscribe. For ad-free episodes and bonus Into the Woods episodes, become a patron with the link in the description. You can also support the show by buying merch. That link is also in the description below. To stay up to date, follow me on Instagram at The Warning Woods, and if you feel ready, meet me here next week for another journey into the Warning Woods. Thank you for listening.